أجمعين من عداوتهم إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد والفرقانه الحميد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واعلموا أن ما غنمتم من شيء فأن لله خمسه ولرسوله ولذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الأمين الكريم السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزياراتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين لا سيما أبا الفضل العباس وعلي الأكبر صلوات اللهم صل على मेरे इल्म में आया है कि मौलाना मिस्र का जो चाचा है वो कल उनका इंतकाल हुआ है तो उनके लिए एक खुसूसी फातिहा मौलाना फजलुल्लाह साहब है तो उनके लिए एक फातिहा صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لم يلد ولم يولد الله كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد اللهم صل बुलंद तर से बोलो अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद I've been reciting in front of you Surah Anfal, verse 41. This is the beginning of the 10th juz, the 10th sipara of the Quran, which says وَعَلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ وَلِرَسُولِهِ وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. This ayah of the Quran is regarding Khums. Khums which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made obligatory upon all Muslims for all time. And during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the battle of Badr, this is where this surah, this ayah was revealed. وَعَلَمُوا, be it known that the spoils of war are for Allah, the fifth, meaning 20%, khums, and for His messenger, and for His close relatives, and the orphans, and the poor and the destitute, and those who are traveling and found themselves in hardship. This is the ayah of the Quran which has been the topic of my discussion over the past 2 sessions I've had, and this will be the 3rd. Now, in the Battle of Badr, there were a few things which came into the custody of Rasulullah and in the custody of the Muslims in general. And this ayah is dealing specifically for those things which were gained at this battle. They are dealing with specifically the things which were gained at this battle. This is the specific application. And then you have the general application of this khums. Now Rasulullah ﷺ used to take this khums. Allah himself did not appear to take, this is my share of khums and I will take it. No. Rasulullah took the share of Allah. Because it says, وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ مَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ. It is for Allah khums, and for the messenger, and for the close relatives, and for the yatim, the orphans, and for the poor, and for the wayfarer. So Allah's share of khums goes to Rasulullah. And Rasulullah, that khums, which was 20% of maybe camels, maybe horses, maybe zirra, meaning the armor, be it swords, be it anything. 20%, if you had 100 swords, 20%, 20 swords would go to Rasulullah. And then he would dispose of it by giving it to his close relatives, and also then the other categories. So Rasulullah had complete control of khums, and he gave this share to the people who are listed in this ayah of the Quran. And this has been, for those of you who just maybe your first session with me regarding this subject, I just want to highlight a few things I've covered, and inshallah I want to quickly move on. And I said in previous lectures that this ayah of the Quran is a permanent ayah of the Quran, a permanent injunction of the Quran. And I gave you evidence yesterday, not yesterday, but the day before that, I gave you evidence regarding this. And I told you of one event where the tribe of Abu Qais, particularly the tribe of Rabi'a, came to Rasulullah and said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how can we implement Islam and also tell those people who we have left behind what Islam is? And Rasulullah mentioned that the shahadat, and also praying, and also giving zakat, and also fasting in the month of Ramadan, and also giving khums. This was the injunction which Rasulullah was imposing upon the tribe of Rabi'a when the tribe of Rabi'a was asking a question regarding Islam. Rasulullah, give us something regarding Islam. And khums was mentioned as one of the 5 principles of Islam, with namaz, with the fasting, with the shahada. So this was the concept which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even during his own time, mentioned this. So this is no Shia fabrication. That was the point I was trying to make. And the other point at the beginning, I think this was the first one, I said that if you can prove your stance, if you can prove your point from the opposing side, why present your own case? This is something which I said is practice in law as well. That when you cross-examine somebody, if he can say what you want him to say, why give your own evidence? Because the judge is saying he is defending himself, and yet he is agreeing what the prosecution is saying. So, prosecution proves its case. So this is exactly the same. If I can prove my own point of view, our own Shia stance from our Sunni brothers, I don't have to present my own evidence. And this was one of the underlying factors of this theme, is I'm trying to use not Shia sources. Just rely purely on our brothers. And I gave you this from the Sunni sources regarding this particular event. And this has been mentioned in Muslim and Bukhari regarding this event, regarding Rasulullah being asked these questions. Now, today, I want to dwell a bit more on this concept of khums. And just because these things are discussed in books, rarely on mimbars. And I think, somebody was saying that nobody is really appreciating this. I said, okay, it doesn't really matter. At least I am. So, At least I am. Because seriously, I have really thoroughly enjoyed researching this. Because I have a tendency of looking up subjects if I find something interesting, and I carry on. And I thought this subject, because Khums is a part of our Fru'id-Din, and sometimes we don't even know our Asul. So Fru is, and Khums is fifth in this category, and it is something which is so important to Muslims in general, and Shias in particular, that we should give this obligation. And inshallah, in one of the lectures towards the end of Muharram, I will dwell upon this point of how important it is, because if I talk about Khums and do not talk about the necessity of giving Khums, it will not be justice to the topic of Khums. So inshallah, I will cover this topic as well, that the importance of giving Khums and why it is not, as I said before, a royalty tax. I said yesterday, the day before that, this is not a royalty tax. This is no special status for the Sayyids. This is equality for the Sayyids. And I said that because one has been taken away from, zakat has been taken away from, zakat is something which they cannot have recourse to, then they need another form of replacement. And this Khums, from the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the prayers of Rasulullah, this was then the replacement for zakat. Now, I said yesterday that Abdullah ibn Abbas, Yani ibn Abbas, was complaining in, I'm not going to go through the tradition again, repeat again, because that's not my intention. I want to move on because there's so much to say and so few days left to say, because inshallah we have a few other brothers who inshallah will have the opportunity to speak. And believe you me, if anybody feels that they want to come up and speak, you are quite welcome. I don't regard this as only my obligation. If anybody feels that they have a topic which is important and which will be interesting to the community, please come up and say to Sheikh Imran or say to anybody that we would like 10, 15, 20 minutes and half an hour. There's no compulsion in me being here. It is through your grace that you listen to me, and perhaps my bravery to be speaking in front of you. So we discussed the permanence of Khums. Now, we understand Khums because it is in Shia lexicon. It is amongst Shia terminology, Khums. Because any Shia who knows anything about Shiaism knows our Asul and knows our Furu. Might not know in which category they come, but we know Khums is a part of Asul, of Furu, and not part of Asul. We know our 5 Asuls and we know our 10 Furus. And if you mix the two, you know, no bhai, ye jo hai na, Asul, aap Furu mein dal rahe hain. You're mixing the two together, we know this. Because we have been told this from the mimbars, from our ulama, and when we were children. So this 5th concept of Khums is something which is common among Shias. Because our Sunni brothers do not use Khums and regard Khums purely in the time of Rasulullah, and after the passing away of Rasulullah, Khums is not a part of their common usage of this word. They don't use this word, Khums. They only read it in the Quran, in Juz number 10, and only when people like Abdullah ibn Abbas are asked, who are this Zil Qurba? And Abdullah ibn Abbas complains, we thought, and the wording is so beautiful. When I was reading this narration from Abdullah ibn Abbas, we thought we were the Zil Qurba. We thought we were the Zil Qurba, but these people who came to power took this privilege away from us. There is an element of rhetoric there. There is an element of showing displeasure in what they did. Abdullah ibn Abbas, he was a very learned scholar of Islam. Abdullah ibn Abbas is called, said, Hibrul Ummah, meaning the scholar of the Ummah. And he is the Shagird
a student of Mullah Ali as well. So he is blessed with this faculty of very sharp brain and knowing Islam as well. So he complains regarding that these people took Khums away from us. Now, Khums is not used by our Sunni brothers. Only their scholars, when they read and do the tafsir of the Quran, they will talk about this. In the Mufassireens, in all the tafsirs, all the Sunni tafsirs, they will talk about Khums when they reach this chapter, Surah Anfal, verse number 41, they talk about Khums. And they will say that this Khums is upon this thing and that thing. Now, before I go on to the next level of Khums, I want you to understand what zakat is. Because zakat is Shia and Sunni. It's so common. We hear zakat and we read zakat. Khums has been mentioned once, and zakat has been mentioned nearly every time the word salat has been mentioned. So zakat is something which we are acquainted with, and khums we are not. In our common usage, in the usage amongst the Muslims, if I asked one of my friends, Sunni friends, do you know what khums is? If he's in Arabic, he said, yes, khums in Arabic means 1/5. But do you know what the religious application of khums is? He would say no. Because it is never discussed amongst their gatherings. Because it is something which, according to them, died with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As far as zakat is concerned, zakat is not something which has been forgotten. Zakat is something which has been enforced to give zakat. And I'm not saying that the Shias have forgotten zakat. All it is that our system of zakat, our ulama, the category of zakat is slightly different. Only slightly different. I'm not saying completely. Only slightly different. So the emphasis shifts on khums and goes away from zakat. Now, khums and zakat, they are applicable to certain things. Zakat is applicable to gold, silver. And I'll come back to gold and silver in 1 second. But let me just go through the list of what zakat is applicable on. It is applicable on gold and silver, camel, cattle, flocks of sheep or goat. Then you have wheat, barley, raisins, and dates. How many? 9. 9 items. Now, for khums, it is 7, but I'm going to string that to 6. You have the spoils of war. This is what the Quranic ayat is. وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُمْ, meaning this was specifically for a war. So the Sunnis and the Shias agree that this is to do with the spoils of war. Next, it's when you have haram and halal, things mixed up. The sequence is not necessarily where you find it in books. This is the way I remember. This is the way I'm presenting it to you. But the sequence is not necessarily how you find it in books. Haram and halal, money mixed together. Haram and halal money mixed together, you have to give khums in order to make it pure. Then you have your earnings, your business. This again, after 1 year, I said this before, after you've done all your calculations, your expenses, 20% of that goes towards khums. Then you have treasure trove, which is anything which is found underneath the ground, which has been left either by your forefathers or peoples of the past. That is also applicable. Upon it is khums. And then you have that land which you sell to a non-Muslim who is living in your domain. So anything you've sold, which is land, profit you made, the money you made is applicable 20% upon that. Then you have mining. If you mine and you find some ore, gold, silver, again 20% is applicable to that. And then you have diving. Anybody who does diving and finds any pearls or any gems, he also has to pay 20% of khums upon that. So these are 7. Now if you shrink this to 6 to make it easier, if you say anything which is found below the surface, meaning diving and mining and treasure trove, and these 3, make them as 1, because they're all below the earth. Treasure trove is below the earth. Diving is below the surface. Mining is below the surface. If you take that as 1, then you're left with basically 1, you're left with 4. So basically you have 4 things upon which khums is applicable to. And then you have the 9 of zakat. Now, you are all aware, before I go on, and I need to say that a car, Toyota Carina, parked wrongly, obstructing the junction, could you please move it? And the registration number is P727 PPH. Toyota Carina, please somebody move that car. It is parked wrongly and causing an obstruction. Now, if I ask somebody, how much tax do we have to pay on zakat? A figure comes to mind. Because this figure we see on the TV. We see it on TV and we see Maulvis mentioning this. They say 2.5%. 2.5%. But 2.5% is not upon the cattle, is not upon the grain, it's not upon the wheat and the barley, the raisins and the dates. 2.5% is on the gold and the silver, which is the currency. Now, zakat, is this something unique to Muslims? Or was this something which existed before Islam? Was zakat something before Islam? Or was it unique to Islam? A question. If you read in Surah Anbiya, verse number, I've got glasses, verse number 73. It says here, وَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِمْ فِعْلَ الْخَيْرَاتِ وَإِقَامَ الصَّلَاةِ وَإِيتَ الزَّكَاةِ وَكَانُوا لَنَا عَابِدِينَ. This ayah of the Quran in Surah Anbiya is regarding Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail. Allah is saying, and we made them imams. وَجَعَلْنَا أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ. They are imams, and they have been made guides with our command, and we have revealed to them and made them do virtuous deeds, and وَإِقَامَ الصَّلَاةِ وَإِيتَ الزَّكَاةِ, and to give zakat. Now, how much zakat did they pay? How much did Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail, how much were they paying? Actually, I was reading this, that some ulama say that this zakat was actually 2.5%. Some ulama say that this zakat, which Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail were ordered, was 2.5%. And some ulama say this has actually come 2.5% from Hazrat Ibrahim. Now, zakat, I'm going to take about another 10 minutes, please. Because I want to wrap up this episode and then move on to the other things which are related. Now, do you know that nowhere in the Quran the list of 9 things I mentioned regarding zakat is mentioned? Do you also know that 2.5% for zakat is not mentioned anywhere in the Quran? So how did they get this? How did they get this figure of 2.5%? Okay, they say that there's a hadith as well. But if Hazrat Ibrahim was paying zakat, how much was he paying? And it has been said this has come from legacy via the lineage of this family, 2.5%. And there's no mention of on what zakat is payable upon. There's a mention of who zakat should be given to, but there's no mention in a categorical form of these 9 things, and how much zakat is on camels, how much zakat is on cattle, how much zakat is on sheep. There's no mention. And there's no mention of how much zakat is on silver and gold and silver. But they say it's 2.5%. And ulama have said that maybe it's actually from Hazrat Ibrahim al-Islam. We have taken many other things from Hazrat Ibrahim al-Islam. So, there's no mention of how much, but we've taken it from Hazrat Ibrahim, according to some ulama. Now, the point I'm going to make now is Khums is even clearer than zakat. Khums is actually clearer than zakat. You have the category, you've got the amount of khums you have to give. There's no mention of zakat. There's no mention of 2.5%. There's no mention of the nisab, of how much barley, how many dates, how many raisins there should be. There's no mention. But there's a mention of how much khums you have to give. Zakat has been mentioned so many times. Khums has been mentioned once, and in that once, Allah has defined how much you have to give. Allah has mentioned how much khums you have to give. In zakat, there's no mention of what you have to give zakat upon. In khums, there is even a category of what khums is applicable to. It is upon the spoils of war. We accept that. Sunni Shias all accept that in their tafsirs. That khums is payable upon anything which is gained in a battle. It could be camels, it could be horses, it could be anything. It could be land. That part of it goes to Rasulullah, 20%. There's another hadith which I will mention to you. It's regarding this under the ground concept. Sunnis in their fiqh books have also agreed that khums is payable from anything which is gained from below the surface. Why? Is because there is a hadith in Bukhari which says this. So how can they deny this? They cannot. And it says here, when a question was asked to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is in Bukhari. Allah's apostle said, it is narrated by Abu Hurairah, there is no, this is a whole sentence, there is no compensation for one killed or wounded by an animal or by falling in a well, or because of working in mines. Now the subject change, in mines. But khums is compulsory on, it is called rikaz, meaning that which is underground. Rikaz, that is the Arabic. Rikaz, that which is underground. So all Sunni ulama, in their fiqh books, and even, if you don't believe me, just do a search on zakat and you will find this. To zakat, on Baitul Mal, you'll find that rikaz is something they all agree that khums is payable upon anything which is below ground. So, those people who say no, khums is only payable upon the spoils of war, even the Sunnis agree that is not the case. There's a greater boundary for khums, and that boundary becomes below ground as well. Anything which is found below ground, khums is paid.